Good morning, empowered yoga teachers. I am here again with another episode of Yin is Your Friend. Today we are doing dangling pose, which is one of my favorite ones. I don't do it as much in my yin yoga classes that I teach because people really don't want to get off the floor. But I did this recently in a class that I taught the other day because it was a full moon and it was Friday the 13th and there was just a lot of energy wanting to bubble up and push up. So I actually veered from my normal yin yoga thing and we did a little bit more muscle oriented movement in that class because I felt like we needed to get past that to get to the yin goodness, and it really worked. So this is a great way to do that. It's also a good way to start a class if you want to start standing. So it's similar to Uttanasana in regular yoga. We have a lot of different versions of variations here that we can do depending on what might be going on with your students. But to start, feet roughly hip distance apart, maybe even a little wider. Actually, wider is nice. And rock forward and back. Shoulders come down, arms come down. I normally do not have people bring the arms up before I move into this because I'm wanting to get that idea of the rounding of the back as opposed to what we would normally do in a regular active yoga class. So bend into the knees. I will also show you this from the side. And then what I do is just have them start walking the hands down to right above the knees. And then just let the shoulders be soft, let the head hang. This is a good way to start because many people, not many, but some people, if they're having any issues in their lower back or maybe even sciatica, any disc issues, high blood pressure, glaucoma, things like that, maybe even diabetes, there may be those kinds of reasons that they have been told not to take their head below their heart. So that you could just keep the back neutral, nice and long here. You can see I started here, knees were bent, I came forward, my spine is not moving from how it was here. So this is keeping all of that safe. My head's above my heart, and you could just keep someone here for a bit. And another lower version of this would be just to take the elbows here, but keep the back straight. So this is just depends on if you have people who don't need their head below their heart. It's really just going to depend on how this feels, and this requires quite a bit of quadricep strength as well to do this. So you could just keep them here. Having the knees bent here is really good to get to the purpose of what this pose is. So what we're doing is eventually, when I show you the full option, we're wanting to get a nice long stretch along the back of the legs and all the way up the back. So, but more about the lower back all the way up to the top. So when the legs are straight here, it's really a lot more in the hamstrings. With bending the knees, we can put the focus a lot more in the back. So with bent knees, I would have them round forward, get to here, and then people can stay that want to or need to stay here. And then watch what happens with my back. If I go further, I'm getting this rounding, my head is dropping. I'm gonna reach for opposite elbows, look down, maybe even rest my head in my arms, and that's just an option. Hands could just reach here. You could have a block, bolster. You could even do this on a chair so someone can lean onto a chair. But here, with my knees bent generously, I take those stretch less into the hamstrings and more into the back. So really rounding here. This is not Uttanasana. This is a lower back rounding stretch with knees bent. It's a good strengthener for the quadriceps. And that actually helps the back and the hips release. If I straighten my legs and do this, then all of this fires up, my glutes fire up more. But here, it's just nice and soft. And then feet could be closer together or further apart. That changes it a little bit. When we take the feet away from the midline, it unlocks the hips more. That can create a different sensation in the back. So again, in these postures, you want your students to be able to explore and feel
what feels good in their body. So for me, I like to have my feet a little bit apart. The toes could even point out a little, just depends, or even a lot, depending on how their foot is oriented at the bottom of their, where it meets the ankle. Coming up, I have them lazily, using the support of their body, press and just walk up. I don't really encourage a lot of rounding. That's kind of just a personal preference. As we come up, I like to use the strength of the back more and the legs more. And then here you are. You could do this toward the wall or at a wall. So especially for people who don't need head below heart. You could also do this, again, like I said, with a chair right here and resting onto that. That takes less muscular effort, which is great for yin yoga. This is so good to stimulate the urinary bladder meridian line, which is roughly associated with frustration versus feeling balanced. And it's really good for mood lifting and depression. It's great for the parasympathetic nervous system. It helps stimulate the relaxation response. So many good things. So in terms of how long to hold this, I usually start people out with like maybe a minute, or look at it in terms of rounds of breath. So if it's 10 rounds of breath, which would be a full inhale and exhale 10 times, their inhale and exhale, not yours, and just let them feel that. Starting with the breath cycles sometimes is better than doing minutes or whatever, because it'll be less time and they'll have something more to focus on besides just holding for time. A great combination here, and maybe I'll just do a little video on this, is to combine this going from that into, if it's safe for knees, squat and stay there for those rounds of breath or a minute or whatever, and then working up to holding for more time. I would say this isn't one we typically hold for a really long time regardless, but I would say 3 to 4 minutes. So you could do 2 minutes in the dangling, 2 minutes in the squat, 2 minutes dangling, 2 minutes squat, and that is a nice combination there. And it's a really good way to get people warmed up for a yin yoga class, although that's kind of a funny thing to say, warmed up, but get them mentally and emotionally warmed up for holding time before you sit them down on the floor. I think that's all I have for you today on dangling. If you have any questions, pop them in the comments or shoot me a DM. I'd love to hear from you. Have a great day.